Please stand for the arrival of the official party. The Honorable James Mattis, the Secretary of Defense. Mr. Michael Rhodes, Director of Administration, Office of the Deputy Chief Management Officer, and Lieutenant General Stacey Harris, Assistant Vice Chief of Staff and Director of Staff, Headquarters Air Force. Please remain standing for the presentation of colors, the singing of our national anthem, and the invocation.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Go, right shoulder, on. Ready, step.
Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Eddie Kinley will now deliver the invocation.
Let us reverently bow our heads. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Eternal Father, today we have come to pay honor to perhaps the greatest civil rights leader of all times, a man among many who both lived and died fulfilling the epitome of his dream, a man who galvanized the hearts of millions and touched the lives of all he came in contact with. Today we have assembled ourselves in honor of his life, his legend, and his legacy. Let us never forget our obligation to love our neighbors as ourselves, and as we reflect on the civil rights of all men, let us do good, love mercy, and walk humbly before our God is our prayer. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Rhodes.
Everyone, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us here today for today's observance. To all those in the auditorium, the hundreds here in the standing room only, thank you for being here to represent the 26,000 or so that work at this headquarters here at the Pentagon. For those who are watching this live or will be watching it rebroadcast on defense.gov, we thank you for joining us as well. I appreciate all the effort that goes into making an event like this happen. We all know it takes a lot of work Certainly want to thank those from the Washington Headquarters Services, Communications and Events Group, all the working groups and teams that have joined with them from the various components of the department, the protocol offices, and others. But I especially want to thank the Joint Service Color Guard, the vocalists from Pershing Zone, as well as Chaplain Kinley for the invocation. They add such a reverence and such ceremony to a special observance. It just makes such a tremendous impact and sets the tone exactly right for what we're here for today. I also want to take a moment while everybody here is very important and very special. I certainly want to thank our secretary for joining us here today. I want to thank the deputy secretary. I think this is probably your 5th or 6th of these here at the Pentagon, sir. And especially want to thank our speaker later, General Harris. Thank you for joining us today. This observance is very important to the department. We actually had the first one of these, Martin Luther King observance, in 1985. I think that's significant because the federal holiday didn't start until 1986, but that's the way the Department of Defense does business. It's important to us because, as in the words of Chaplain Kinley, the significant and powerful life of Dr. King and all that he influenced and all that he changed. His life was cut way too short, being murdered at 39. But what a powerful impact he had in those 39 years. Changed this nation truly. I've had the privilege of being part of this observance since 2007, and it's just been impactful every time I've joined. It's now my pleasure to introduce our secretary. I will share that I had the privilege of knowing him a bit, and I will tell you my observations over the time of the last 15 years have been that he's an exceptional professional. He's an individual who's genuinely interested and concerned with the welfare of those around him and those who work for him. And I think more importantly to me, every day he's committed to reflecting the best of the values of this institution. 4.5 days ago, the Vice President swore him in as our Secretary of Defense. He's had a jam-packed schedule ever since, but as soon as he found out this observance was occurring, he cleared out the time on the schedule to be able to provide us some remarks because he wanted to join with us today. He'll have to leave after his remarks because of his schedule commitments, but he wanted to make sure to be here, and Mr. Secretary, I thank you very much for doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, the 26th Secretary of Defense, the Honorable James Mattis.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much. And Mike, thank you. It's been a pleasure serving alongside you and watching your leadership and the way you can create harmony in some disharmonious places that you've been before. Good to see you back here at the Pentagon. But Deputy Secretary, ladies and gentlemen of the department, good afternoon, and it's an absolute delight to be here back among you again. And I would just tell you that it's appropriate that my first chance to speak to a group in the Pentagon is in honor of Martin Luther King, Jr. That it says something. I just got lucky, I realized, with when the Vice President swore me in, but I would also tell you that this recognizes someone who stood for something, and in our memories and our hearts, and certainly by keeping his memory alive, he still stands for something that we're all very proud of. I'm equally proud of our department, partly because, like Mike says, we are leaders when it comes to this sort of thing, civil rights. A year before it was a holiday, we were already celebrating Martin Luther King Day here in the department. I've been part of the department since I was 18 years old in 1969, which is in the last millennium for you young people here. But I'm also proud of the department for things that happened long before I ever joined it. Last Friday night, soon after taking the oath, I sent the message out to the department, and I wrote that our nation needs to only look to you, the uniformed and civilian members of our department and your families, to see the fundamental unity of our country. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, anyone who's taken the oath has experienced that unity. We've experienced a co-equal commitment, didn't matter what rank you were, didn't matter if you're civilian or military, a co-equal commitment across this department to the mission, and it's a mission that calls for all hands to strive together and to fight together and to look out for one another. Today we observe the legacy of a man up here on the board behind me, a man who has called upon Americans many times to strive together and to fight together and to do their duty in the long struggle for equality and civil rights. In our nation's history, our military has often served as an example to the American people of unity and strength. of how a diverse group of people can be motivated, even under austere or grim conditions of the battlefield, to come together as equals. As far back as November 1805, in the first decades of our experiment in democracy on this continent, 2 young Army officers led a special unit, the Corps of Discovery, across the harsh landscape of North America to the Pacific Northwest. They arrived at the Pacific Ocean at the mouth of the Columbia River and faced months of cold and deprivation before the snows would melt and they could return home to the east. In this perilous situation, the unit was confronted with the choice of where to build their winter camp, and they had to look across the raging mouth of that river spilling into the ocean, and they had to take a decision that could cost them their lives. Young Meriwether Lewis and William Clark put the matter of whether to cross the perilous mouth of the Columbia to all hands. The unit included a slave named York and a Native American woman named Sacagawea. For the first time in the history of our republic, among the members of this isolated patrol, far from home, a black man, a Native American, white men, and a woman all voted as equals. They voted to cross that terrible water, and the expedition survived the winter. They returned east to report back to their Commander-in-Chief, President Thomas Jefferson. They accomplished their mission to find the best route to the Pacific, and it was an all-hands effort. Military service in America is a touchstone for American patriots of all races, genders, creeds. The men and women of the Department of Defense, military and civilian, reflect the diverse and selfless character of our national defense and have done so long before our nation had reached the level it has reached today in terms of civil rights. Our armed forces are stronger today because of the perseverance of Dr. King and so many others in this country who have fought for civil rights and equality for all. And we can trace our department's roots back to an Army patrol in 1805 when we listened to our better angels, and on this day of action, we are inspired to continue being a model for our nation. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for continuing to defend this experiment in democracy. It's an absolute delight to be back among you, and I'm reminded of that especially on Martin Luther King Day. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Mike, Stacy.
Please be seated. Again, not surprised by his being here today, but certainly it was a privilege to have him join with us and share those remarks. And now I have to tell you, when we first presented the question to General Harris about sharing some reflections, some observations, some remarks with us here today, it took about that long for her to accept and to say, sure, when? Just tell me when, I'll be there. And so we are very thankful for that. You can read her bio, but like many who've risen to the senior ranks of our General Officer Corps, she's had tremendous success in all the command and staff positions across the Air Force, has been an excellent officer, and we are just privileged to have her here with us here today. She's currently the Assistant Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Director of the Air Force Staff. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Stacey Harris.
Thank you so much. For Secretary Mattis on his departure, Secretary Work, thank you for hosting this event. It's an absolute privilege to be here with you today to honor Dr. Martin Luther King and his legacy. Secretary Disbrow, thank you also for taking the time to be here with us today, and thank you for your leadership of our great Air Force. Mr. Rhodes, thank you for the kind introduction, and more importantly, thank you for your long and distinguished record of dedication and service to the men and women in uniform. Distinguished guests, general and flag officers, our senior executive service, senior leaders across the Joint Force, to our soldiers, sailors, Marines, coasties, airmen, and civilian teammates and families, as well as our international partners attending, welcome. Most importantly, though, I want to thank everyone who helped make this event a reality and continue to give us an opportunity each year to honor Dr. King. We're gathering for a noble purpose, as the legacy of Dr. King will certainly endure without our annual gathering, but by pausing in remembrance today, we show that we're making this a priority and that we're cementing his legacy one day at a time. I was only 4 years old when Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington in 1963. And at the time, my family was living in Tachikawa, Japan, as I am an Air Force brat. And when I look at the pictures from back then, when I was 4 years old, taken from birthday parties with other children, I was already living in the world that Dr. King mentioned, of where little black boys and black girls were able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and walk together as sisters and brothers, because our military at the time was integrated in leading our nation's journey into segregation. My connection to Dr. King began, though, when I was nearly 9 years old, when he was assassinated on that fateful day on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in 1968. And although even then I didn't quite understand the magnitude of the man he was, what I witnessed from my parents, from our friends, from the television coverage, was the emotion of extreme sorrow and grief. By then, we were living in Newburgh, New York, because my father was stationed at Stewart Air Force Base. Racial tensions in Newburgh were already smoldering, and the death of Dr. King was like adding fuel. And the emotions of sorrow and grief turned to outrage and anger that turned Newburgh into a fire of civil unrest. Out of the ashes of the fires, though, of anger and despair that roared across our nation, wisdom and righteousness prevailed. As the Fair Housing Act, which was called the Civil Rights Act of 1968, was passed shortly thereafter, it prohibited discrimination concerning the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, religion, national origin, and sex. And although the bill was the subject of a contentious debate in the Senate, it was passed quickly by the House. The days after the assassination of Dr. King, it was signed into law by President Johnson exactly 1 week following Dr. King's death. The act stands as the final great legislative achievement of the Civil Rights era. In life and death, Dr. King was a catalyst for change. Righteousness prevailed, and his legacy was forever woven into the fabric of who we all are today. So if you think of words to describe Dr. King, you may use kindness and compassion and equality and strength and vision and love. In almost every context, these words symbolize the ingredients in a recipe for unity. While he was a man fighting for justice and equality among all races and all our glorious skin colors, the traits he lived by were colorless. His actions and deeds rose above the limitations of sight, but settled upon the strength of his vision for a better world. So today I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about his remarkable hero's vision of service and change, and the challenge all of us to embody his ideals in our daily lives. Every American generation faces its challenges, and ours is no different. We are living in the midst of a significant social and political evolution taking place across our nation and all around the world. Our fellow citizens are questioning the American dream, and in many cases, the sense of fear and anxiety is palpable. But what will carry us as a nation through these turbulent times and make us stronger? I would argue that the answer lies in the American ideals, Dr. King's ideals of service and change. Dr. King once said, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" You all serving our country understand the importance of this message more than most. It's what sets you apart and why your fellow citizens hold you in such high regard. In fact, many of our brothers and sisters have embodied the truest form of selfless service and courage, giving their lives for the security of our nation and the values we hold so dear. The spirit of service is hardwired in our DNA, men and women in uniform, and I would argue that it's also hardwired in all Americans. Regardless of race, color, creed, religion, as Americans, service is inherent in our character and in a great degree defines who we are as a nation. Dr. King believed in a nation of freedom and justice for all and encouraged all citizens to live up to the purpose of potential of America, to make this country a better place to live. And I say there's rarely a better way than we can do this than through daily service to others. In our military, we have opportunities to serve with compassion, even in the midst of war, through humanitarian assistance at home and abroad, rescuing and saving lives of our own that are injured or in peril, and building capacities of our partners to be self-sufficient. Our service extends to our communities, as it has traditionally been with our Guard and Reserve and civilian teammates, and increasingly so with our active duty that now resides off base. We live, work, play, vote, and volunteer in the communities where we live, whether it be our fraternities and our sororities, and I must say hello to my sisters of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, through schools or faith-based organizations, public service organizations, and non-profit organizations we serve. So we can never forget that Dr. King's idea of service is a game changer, giving us the power to individually and collectively transform others' lives for the better. It's one of the few things we can employ every day for the good of our fellow Americans. We all have the power to change lives through service, and there's never been a better time or more acute need for us to all take action and serve. So every year we celebrate a day of service in January to honor Dr. King's birthday. I believe it's the perfect way to start a new year. It's a day on, not a day off. We should be celebrating his legacy every day, though, serving others. So I challenge you to continue to live a life of service, one day at a time. Now I'll shift gears and talk for a moment or two on Dr. King's vision for change. His life story and application of nonviolence in the face of social injustice are tremendous examples about how we can all be agents of change for the better. He shows us that the commitment and character of the few can alter the course of history of the many. All too often it starts with the words, "You can't," which we've all heard at some time in our lives. A remarkable attribute, though, to our men and women in uniform is the desire to excel, to contribute, to exist with a fiery passion. And from my experience, one of the best ways to get something done is to just happen to say, or to challenge one and say, "You know what, I don't think we can do it. It can't be done." Just tell them you can't. Then sit back and watch as they prove you wrong. And when we tell a race or gender that they can't be someone or they can't do something, we provoke a powerful response that says, yes, we can. We can break that barrier, like the Buffalo Soldiers, like the Montford Point Marines, like my personal heroes, the WASP and the Tuskegee Airmen. Even in 2017, our Air Force celebrates its 70th birthday. We pride ourselves on breaking barriers. Barriers not only in the air and space, but culturally, beginning with race and gender. Many of these barriers were broken in response to "you can't." It started because "you can't" is incendiary. It's like the fuel that powers our jets and our rockets and our innovative spirit. You can't is a highly flammable substance at odds with the fire that lives in the belly of our military members. And when you mix you can't with this fire, a storm takes shape and pressures build, and as a result, the tension needs an outlet. And what evolves are bold and innovative ways to make change and solve problems. However, we only have to look at the history of our great Tuskegee Airmen to realize that breaking these barriers was not always received with open arms. In light of this, Dr. King's teachings refer us to creative tension leading to change. In a letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. King spoke of nonviolent direct action, creating tension within a community, forcing it to confront the issue. He wrote, "I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly worked and preached against violent tension, but there is a type of constructive tension that is necessary for growth." If the tensions we faced during Dr. King's time endures today, they do endure today, but I say this with careful distinction. We are wise to put this tension to good use. So I remember in my previous job, I was a 22nd Air Force commander at Dobbins Air Reserve Base, and I took command there in 2014. And I had a number of units, and one of them was a flying training group, the 340th Flying Training Group. And they were responsible for teaching our pilots how to fly at undergraduate pilot training, and also for providing military training instructors at basic. And when I met with them shortly after I got there, they were telling me of a tragic incident that had happened. And a couple of years prior, during a training flight, the aircraft suffered an accident and our pilots perished. 2 pilots. One was on active duty at the time, and the other was a reservist on what we call an inactive duty status, and it's just a pay status. Once the families had grieved and had their funerals, it was on to the business of the compensation that they were to receive. So the person on, the family of the person on active duty received full compensation for that tragic death. But that person on a different pay status did not and received significantly less. So there was a movement going on, a passion, a creative tension that said, this is not right. When an airman serves, you all serve, and you all deserve, especially the families, the same compensation. So they worked it through myself at 22nd Air Force, and then through the Air Force Reserve Command, and then through the Air Force, and then finally this year it's in our NDAA language. But it takes time. Change takes time, and it was a long, hard road. Hard things are hard. Change isn't easy or comfortable, but we all are in positions to use this creative tension to change our organizations and our communities and even the world. Dr. King said the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Equally important, we are responsible for fostering change with those who work with us. And we owe it to each other to create and promote environments where diversity and inclusion aren't simply buzzwords. They are national security imperatives and true force multipliers. Our nation demands we use 100% of the talent, innovation, and experience to bring forth the solutions to our most complex challenges. And each and every one of us know that we can be that spark of change. So let's commit to each other, and let's follow in Dr. King's footsteps and bring true change in each other's lives. So I'll end by reading a quick letter that Airman 3rd Class Richard P. Clements sent to Dr. King in January 1966. Dr. Reverend King, as a young white American of 19 years of age, I would simply like to express my profound respect and utmost appreciation for your efforts in the cause of humanity. Your steady guiding hand and spirit have led many to see the light of moral right. I respect you ever so highly and wish you the very best in all that life here and hereafter has to offer. So we too echo that sage wisdom of this 19-year-old airman, offering our profound respect and utmost appreciation for Dr. King and his vision of service and change for the cause of humanity. We are a great country, and we owe it to Dr. King and our fellow citizens to carry on the legacy, knowing that service is in many times difficult and that the hard work of change will always be at odds with the endless you can'ts we will face. In closing, though, I look forward to continuing to serve with you all, and all of us accepting the challenge of being agents of change for the betterment of the world. Thank you.
Please be seated. I just want to take a moment to thank General Harris for those thoughtful, timely, and relevant remarks, the way you wove all that together of Dr. King's really timeless story and message into the Department of Defense here today. So with that, I'd ask if Deputy Secretary Work could just come forward for a moment in order to present this memento to General Harris. They'd like a photo with you anyways, better.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for the benediction.
Let's reverently bow our heads to be dismissed. Our Father and our God, we thank you so much for what our hearts have felt, what our ears have heard. And let us always remember, God, that none of us are free until all of us are free. We thank you for what we heard and what we experienced this day. And may we always treasure the words of Dr. King and all those that have gone before him and after him in the cause of civil rights and civil liberties. Is our prayer in your name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rhodes.
So as General Harris mentioned, she was an Air Force brat. I've been an Army brat, so I've lived my entire life associated with the Department of Defense. There was 5 months between graduating college and joining the Army that I actually didn't have a DOD type of ID card. But I'm exceptionally proud to have been part of this institution. It is not a perfect institution, but it is an institution that always strives to improve, always strives to make good on whatever it may have fallen short on. It is a tremendous institution. I recall that in Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, he had a little segment there. He said, where I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a world where they are judged not by the color of the skin, but by the content of their character. And whether right or wrong, I have to tell you that makes me think of the Department of Defense. This is an institution where they are focused on performance, where they're focused on getting the mission completed. They're focused on ensuring that the task is accomplished and how well it is accomplished, not by whom it is accomplished. It's an institution where the men and women who wear the uniform of this nation and risk their lives will look to their left flank and to their right flank, and they will see a fellow comrade in arms, and they trust and they know that that person will be there for them no matter what it takes, no matter if it costs them their lives. And it has nothing to do with their ethnicity. It has nothing to do with their religion. It has nothing to do with their personal beliefs. It is because they are fellow comrades and comrade in arms. And so that's why I have such great respect and am honored to be part of this institution. And near the end of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, he recited the words, "To my country 'tis of thee." And as he went through that, he got to the point where it says, "Let freedom ring." And he had, with powerful eloquence, he took those words, "Let freedom ring," and really wrapped up a tremendous oratory, one of the most tremendous in this nation. But I would submit, you and I, we collectively, we have the opportunity to let freedom ring in the words that we speak. We have the opportunity to let freedom ring in the actions that we take. We have the opportunity to let freedom ring in the compassion that we show. We have the opportunity to let freedom ring in the honorable service that we commit ourselves to. So let's go forth today and in the future, and with our lives, let's let freedom ring. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the departure of the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This concludes today's observance.